Okay, welcome back. Now we're on air. Dr. Ego has been saying a few things during the break. I just wanted us to tie a few loose ends on that conversation. Dr. Ego and Sheila, your mic is hot. In the budget statement of 2025-2026, yes, Mbadi said that to support livelihoods and small businesses, the government has disbursed loans amounting to 71 billion shillings by the end of May 2025 through the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, and said that this initiative has provided access to affordable credit to over 26 million customers, with a strong base of 9 million repeat borrowers and a repayment rate of 79%. A total of 4.5 million borrowers are eligible to be graduated to the mainstream financing institutions. And to build a culture of savings for the future, the fund has also successfully mobilized 4.5 billion shillings in savings from its beneficiaries. And Dr. Ugo, a question to you then. If indeed we have lent out 71 billion shillings to 26 million customers, that would be perhaps half of the population if you had to look at each loan as an individual. Should you feel the impact on it?
By all means. By all means, we should be feeling the impact, but the question is whether this money actually went into business or into anything investment-wise, or actually a lot of the borrowing from Hustler Fund was in the same category of Fuliza, only that it's government backed. Why I asked that question is that when you look at the amounts, until for instance, the Chama possibility was created, where you are able to get, I think, 100,000 Kenya shillings. When you look at the amounts that were being lent is 500, 1,000, then of course you continue. And everybody was borrowing. That's the other thing that we never talked about. I remember even the former cabinet secretary for the National Treasury saying he actually also borrowed and paid. Now you can be sure he didn't borrow to go and put into business. Maybe he was testing the system to make sure that it works. And therefore, the fact that this is not something that you're feeling in terms of how much it has enabled business out there, then tells you most likely it was borrowed for consumption, to be able just to put food on the table. Because when you think about the same period, the number of businesses that have either closed or been auctioned because they were not able to meet their liabilities, when you think about the non-performing loans to banks and to SACCOs, and basically the numbers almost, but there's another number that we don't talk about. There's a very interesting number around the figures for gambling. How much money is being gambled every day? It's significant. Because gambling.
So you think the source could be there?
People are borrowing to gamble.
Yeah. Because they see it as a source of livelihood.
So because it's hyped as this thing, within all the options, of, I think I saw a figure like about 2 billion or thereabout, that people are putting in, almost every day, So for me, I don't see the money, how it has gone to help in terms of business operationalization, because on this other side, you are seeing a lot of non-performance. But secondly, is whether the government was the right institution to handle all this loaning. Especially with the experience we have had before with the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, with the Women Enterprise Development Fund, with the Uwezo Fund. The three were supposed to be merged into the Biashara, Biashara Fund at some point. Whether that was the most effective mechanism, especially for business support. Yet you have a very advanced and a very expansive cooperative movement in this country, that perhaps could have handled that much better, in terms of advancing and providing business.
Okay, all right, and of course repeated poll researchers, is that English? Opinion polls are showing that most of the concerns that the people have is about cost of living, unemployment, corruption, cost of education, shift-share conversation. And they say 57% who spoke to InfoTrack Research and Consulting back in August say that they feel the country is headed in the wrong direction. And 79% of Kenyans feel the cost of living is actually higher than it was a year ago. At that time, it's 70% that said the cost of living was high. If you had to look at even TIFA research, they show similar findings when it comes to the country heading in the wrong direction. Now, there's the question of voter registration. And Joshua, the IEBC, sometime last week, spoke and said that only 7,000 had come out to register out of a target of 6.3 million. Of course, it's a continuous exercise. But what's going on? Because many had expected that the reawakening of the young people, popularly known as Gen Zs, would yield in the registration. Why are we not as enthusiastic as we were?
Politics is an emotional process. And I think when you talk about awakening, it was circumstantial and remains circumstantial in the sense that if you are to tell me we were registering voters in June 2024 or June to September 2024, there would have been an avalanche. But at the moment, you have a lull. And the lull is basically more or less like rubber meeting the road in the sense that the political phase is now here with us. The circle has begun. And when a political phase or a circle begins, it now boils down to positioning, it boils down to party politics, it boils down to the dynamics at the regional, at the county level, which then completely takes away the attention from a common agenda. So IBC has just come in the backdrop of this lull where at the moment more or less the reflective mood we spoke about even in the political space. So let me use for example, let's look at the dynamics that has happened. Post Gen Z, at the Gen Z time of protest, that is June to September 2024, the clarion call was that we are leaderless, we are tribeless, and we are only based on agenda. But 1 year down the line, that has morphed into you have to belong, you have to be in a party. And that's why you see now more or less like the leading lights getting out of their way to try to brand themselves. Do you imagine, for example, David Maraga would be a political leader at the moment because he's now joined the Greens party. You find the opposition, everyone trying to place himself or somewhere. Number two, you have the by-elections that are coming, both at the ward level, at the county level, at the constituency level. And you see how they are increasingly taking a regional approach so that the dynamics in Malava are not the same with the dynamics in Mbeere North. So it has become localized. So the moment it becomes localized, coupled with the fact that the main concern is the cost of living, people trying to make ends meet. And I think that particular opinion poll where people are saying that life has become difficult, it is based on the statistics for August and September, where there's been a slight slump and there's more or less like increased inflation by 0.1%, which then has that impact. So my assessment then would be IBC has just set the ball rolling, but I don't think it should be the last time they're doing it because what they are going to achieve now would basically to create awareness, but I don't think they will achieve the numbers they target. Lastly, Kenyans are always said to have peculiar behavioral pattern in the sense that we're always last minuters. So I would expect the numbers to be more the last 1 week compared to now. The moment you set a deadline, that can be. And I think the government yesterday or the other day mentioned that they're no longer going to charge the 1,000 bob for the ID, basically to try rejig people getting an ID and taking it to the polling station. I'm just wondering, what happened to the idea, which I think came from the new IBC chair, Ethekon, a person I know. He mentioned they seek to collapse this difference between a national ID and a voter's card, where they can make it mandatory that if you have an ID, then primarily you automatically qualify to be a voter. For me, that would be a simple game changer. That you would not be forcing people through another layer where you're telling people, go register again. The moment you make it as such and say you get an ID, you are in one step away from getting.
But now, in our suspicious culture, where people say that even dead voters are going to vote, multiple registrations will happen, how do you transfer the database of the registrar of persons to the IBC register?
You're not asking transfer. That is the whole idea why you have an audit. Number two, if it's about a dead voter voting, minus the idea of a voter's card alone, they can still vote. Number two, what have we been doing the last two election cycles? We've been trying to automate. And importantly, the realization is that everything ends at the polling station. That in itself creates a layer of audit, because if we are in a polling station that has registered voters 700 or 600, and you are able to see and can easily be analyzed and edited, including the agents for the different parties at the different levels, I don't think that scare.
What I'm asking is, if the record of an ID is with the what is the name? IPRS.
Yes.
But at the same time, so that person is registered as a citizen from Westlands.
Yes.
So the ID is available. But also, Turkana Central may have the same ID. You see, the idea of an IBC register is that there are unique identifiers, including your biometrics and everything else. So how would that look like for the political class? And you're one of them.
I would imagine if it's a question of laying over from ID to a voters to make it automatic, then it would mean one, synchrony, but importantly, it would mean a voter has to choose, because the choice of a polling station primarily rests with the voter. So on the part of a politician, your job is just to ensure now that everyone potentially with an ID in your constituency or within your ambit can be a potential voter, your job then is to sensitize and say there's a choice that has to be made as to where you'll be casting your ballot. So that is a question. And I think the moment you make it as easy and simple as that, the so-called Gen Zs, or the people who've not registered, automatically translate to new voters immediately. Because what we have right now is cumbersome. Importantly, can there be a better way, for example, when we say synchrony, just like the way the problem has been, what sense does it have to work with multiplicity of documents? That has always been the debate. I have a passport, I have an ID. Remember when you used to have an NHIF card, you have an NSF card, and the proposition for the last 10 years has always been, why don't we synchronize and have a single document? That was the whole idea why Huduma number used to be spoken about, but again, it was lost in the semantics. So my idea would be, for the voter and ID, that's a no-brainer, because for you to vote, you must have an ID. So why don't you synchronize the two and make it simple, but then create a waterproof system that ensures one, choice has to be made as to which polling station you're voting for.
Right.
Number two, as you say, IBC then becomes the person in charge and in control as to who actually cast the vote. And finally, by the experience of 22, which then showed that what is important, the activity resonates around the polling center. If you are able to create a watertight system that can be verified at the polling center, for me, I see it as a thing, because we are trying to ensure how can we have as much as, because IBC is projecting to have 26.9 million voters. It's easier said than done. Telling people, for example, to stop their hustle, even the gamblers, to stop gambling, to go cast or to go apply for a voter's card, that's a long route, and it is associated with the traditional way of doing things.
Right.
With the current system where we get things online, and even if you look at even the public documents people get, including police certificate of good conduct, why don't we make it easy for the voters to get the thing? And that can be just cross over the two, ID and the voter's card.
Okay. All right. Diana, your thoughts about this process of enlisting new voters, and whether we've done enough to sensitize Kenyans on what power is in that name of being a voter?
First, I doubt we... now I am lost whether we've done enough to convince voters who are not yet registered to register. Because when this was announced, I hoped that all the young people, remember in the last election, we got to a voters register of about 22 million, but we still missed over 5 million. And even when we got the new, with a database of 22, only 14 million voted.
Yeah.
Since 2022, the National Registration Bureau tells us we have an additional voters, people who have acquired IDs, who are 6 million. So we are looking at getting to, that's 28 million or 30 if there's an aggressive registration. But I'm told IEBC is struggling. But am I surprised that IEBC is struggling? No. What the political class has done to this country in terms of breaking trust in public institutions is something that we must aggressively, maybe even more than voter registration, address. Because when you freeze voter registration for close to 3 years of an electoral cycle, make sure we are lagging behind. Stop it through court processes. Finally, appoint commissioners where Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission is only independent by name. And I would like very much to defend that the IEBC needs an independent register. Because we've always argued that if we just retain the NRB database, and IEBC is only using that to verify, and why the voter registration is important, because you decide where you're going to vote, what ward, what constituency, and it is different from maybe your constituency of birth or constituency of residence. And Kenyans have different reasons. Sheila could decide to come and vote in the constituency I am vying because she's very convinced about my candidacy. That is always allowed.
Yeah.
So the importance of the voter register is to ensure that the independence of the process is only secured and safeguarded by the IEBC. Yes, the NRB becomes a critical actor in verifying that everybody who is on the register is a citizen and one who is duly issued with an identity document. But until we convince Kenyans that the ballot is trustworthy, increasingly, we are looking at the apathy that we faced both in 2022 and 2017. What will it take? What will it take? Is it more inspiring candidates at the ballot? I am not sure, because for some reason, the political class has a way of mobilizing people to register as voters better than anyone.
Yeah.
And incentives have been given by the government. Remember, President Ruto introduced a fee for ID, and now he has suddenly listened and he has removed it. All because we must do, yes, for replacement of IDs. But it was also just recently increased, if you recall. I think Senator Okia had launched a program of fundraising for people to pay for the payment of the initial ID application. Government realized that, and again, that was done away with. All this had been introduced in the guise that we need to increase the revenues that we have.
Yeah.
And we decided to take revenues out of the most fundamental documents. Legal identity document, birth certificate, IDs. Passport may be a travel document that can be a bit luxurious, but an ID and a birth certificate is extremely immoral. There's a lot that must be done to let Kenyans know that we must not only filter the next caliber of leaders at the ballot, we must also filter them during political parties, nominations and primaries. Because in this country, independent leaders or independent parties, independent candidates, are they even 1%? They are less than 1%. Every time what we get at the ballot is what has been filtered in the political parties. So I think we need to do very, very comprehensive political education.
And while on that point, because even in the last elections in 2022, the nominations within political parties, yes, they have registers. They will pride and say we have 7 million members across the country. But on the day of voting for the nominations, it's everyone who comes from that region who comes with, they come with an ID, they identify and they vote. Never mind, they may not necessarily be members of that political party. How do we cleanse that process? Of course, politicians don't want that. But political parties, if you're to get nominated, you have to nominate a candidate because you are a registered member of that party. But you don't like it.
I have tried, I think the last time I observed political primaries was 2013, and I think there was a stronger register of political parties. How we morphed to, actually, I think political parties use the voters register.
Yes, up to now.
They use the voters register for the political primaries, which is not okay.
Yes.
How every political party is measured based on, you're supposed to have presence in 24, there are even at least 24, there's a percentage in every county and so on. So we must begin by enforcing a political party register. Maybe even create a proper calendar so that people are also not defecting. Because we also have a problem of strengthening and making political party institutions. To be honest, we are not sure the political parties that will be on the ballot in 2027.
Coalition.
Not even coalition. Just think about the president. The president is one of the seasoned politicians in this country. 2022, he vied on UDA. Yeah. 2017, Jubilee Party. 2013, URP. 2007, ODM. 202, KANU. You're not sure. And based on that, you can be sure there's a very high likelihood Kenya Kwanza will be a fully fledged party. It is a possibility. We therefore fail to build political parties as institutions with philosophies by the time I register. And I think that's actually why you do not have political party registers. There's no difference. It is just what gets us to the ballot.
Okay,
yeah.
There's something you wanted to say.
I wanted to mention that it is basically the reality of our politics. Just two comments. One, the reason why political parties end up using the National Voters Register is because primarily their register is unverified, and number two, most Kenyans never register as political party members. People who register as political party members primarily are the aspirants and the politicians, active political players, which is a tiny minority. And then our parties are always pegged on regional support in terms of strongholds. And let me give, for example, if you talk about UDA, if UDA is to conduct a primary in Nandi, then every voter is potentially a UDA member because that is their stronghold. If DCP for Rigathi Gachagua is to conduct a primary in Nyeri, primarily all voters in Nyeri are assumed to. So parties don't have that register because Kenyans don't register as political players. Secondly, this idea of presidential candidates or aspirants moving, it is almost set on the stone. Reason is we lost our opportunity in 2010. If we were to be a parliamentary democracy where presidents, prime ministers are elected through the power of a political party having number of seats, maybe this would have worked. But in our presidential system that is personality based, like at the moment, look at the united opposition. You don't hear about the individual parties. You hear about the leading lights. You talk about Rigathi Gachagua, you talk about Matiang'i, you talk about Martha Karua, but you don't hear about their respective parties. How many Kenyans from the streets can tell you the political party that Martha Karua has just launched? No one. The president will tell you what matters and justifies the means. So politicians are very pragmatic. And that can even apply to our voter registration. That's why I'm saying we have to be creative and pragmatic. Politicians at the moment are able to know. And I think the best testing barometer for us will be the by-elections. It is Christian to be almost like a mini election of some kind, because it will be able to test and show the resolve. One, if you talk about the Mount Kenya moving away from the ruling party, then Mbere will dictate that. If you talk about how Western Kenya is restive, then Malava will dictate that. And you see this play not about being parties anymore. Yeah. Look, for example, if you go to Malava, you find that people who support government, and now some of them are supporting the DAPK candidate, who primarily DAPK should be in opposition. So you find that mix-up. So it is basically our political attitude that I feel the culture can only change if you have tangible change in positions and the parties themselves. But as it stands, I'm fully agreeing with her. 2027, never rule out. We'll be having new coalitions with new names.
Okay, all right. Now, Sheila, the essence of, obviously, we organized under political parties, but then there's so much interference because Kenyans have been cheated on several occasions, on several elections, and that's why they went out in 2024. Because you have this big promise, you're going to resolve all your basic challenges. In 2 years' time, indeed, the challenges have been resolved, but just for the politicians, not Kenyans. How then do you convince Kenyans to go out and register as voters, knowing too well the system almost appears rigged in favor of the politician? Because, listen, if nominations are to be conducted for ex-political party, everyone in the village will be asked to come and vote. Never mind, they're not members. Then how can we cleanse our politics?
I think, first of all, to comment on the low numbers that we have seen in registration, I don't know why this is shocking to everybody. I mean, it's been, what, a week or less than a week? This is a base which is the young people who have generally never showed up to vote. For me, it was to be expected. we have case studies that have been done. In 2008, for the US presidential election, when Obama was a first-timer on the presidential ballot, what happened then was, when we were in university, the university population had never voted prior. So his job was to simply say, let me activate a base that has never traditionally shown up on the ballot, and these are the ones that will carry the day. So everybody was, one, very excited about the candidature itself. So there was an aspiration, there was a figure there who drew, people up to show up to the ballot and then go up and vote. I remember a lot of roommates and people like that who were Americans who were waking up in the morning, people who traditionally never did, and they said, we're going to register because there's somebody who's inspiring us to go and vote. That's one. But two, it was also a lot of canvassing and a lot of groundwork. It wasn't like just because Obama was sitting there, everybody woke up and they knew what to do. These are people who didn't even know, how do you vote, how do you start this? So there was a lot of activism that was put on the ground, and it was very much youth-led that then propelled him. And so if you look at Obama's numbers at the time, it really came, the support came from this very population that we are discussing today. So am I surprised that IEBC, after all the drama of 3 years not even being functional, that in the first week they expect everybody to have shown up? No. What we have to discuss, Sam, is can we address the trust deficit that is going on in this country? In every revolution, and personally as an economist, I stand by the fact that we're going through an economic revolution. Yeah. And in every revolution, whether it was, Mau Mau, the rest of them, there always is a time when you feel like, well, I'm frustrated because nothing is happening. It is quite normal. There's been a lot of voter apathy, right, traditionally. 2022, you had 8 million people who never showed up. They registered to vote, but they never made it to the ballot itself. We have an additional 6 million now that are qualified to be able to get the voters registration, and that's only 7,000 of them have now shown up to get this voters registration card. So that means there's 14 million here. Mm-hmm. Now, the president who is serving today got more or less about, 7 million? Versus the 14 million that is out there somewhere. Yeah. So they have a president. They're sitting somewhere with a president, but they have to go, they have to register, and they have to make all these marks. I think for me, because of the trust deficit, because of the fact that, revolutions also get fatigued and then they pick up again, it is quite a normal cycle that we're going through this. And what it would take is a bit of reflection. We ask ourselves, in our case in Kenya, why is this going on? Is it because logistically it's difficult to get there? Is it because maybe they're feeling like the political class is now winning this, and there's no point of them coming in, which is the trust deficit that we're discussing, and many other factors that are coming into play. Personally, I think it's a wait and see. I mean, we still haven't done a lot of activation to see where this goes in. If we go in with the same energy that we had last year with finance bill, then we'll see a very different result. So I think it's a wait and see. IEBC also, and the government, needs to work a lot to earn the trust of these young people who have traditionally never voted, because a lot of them are feeling very helpless at the moment. They feel like no matter what we do, these people are winning, right? Okay. Yeah.
And Dr. Rugo, as we transition to now the question of what then? Because every other politician is busy in their town of her towns, trying to make a case. I think yesterday the United Opposition -1 was in Kitui, and they
-1 some.
They had several things to say. Okay.
Some.
They had several things to say.
That's their leader.
And they have had several things to say on the trail. Sheila, please.
Okay, I've stopped. I apologize. We shall focus.
Focus.
Yeah. Really? So this messaging, do you see the political class listening to the aspirations of Kenyans in general, but also to single out the young because they're hurting the most, perhaps?
So I wanted to start by saying that what happened on June 25th, unfortunately, is difficult to erase. The killings and what has followed, the abductions and what have you, that's creating a lot of sense of helplessness, as Sheila has said. And the rhetoric that has followed after that, that this election will definitely be won in one direction or the other. I think that then, but still early. Again, as Joshua, who definitely is in more politics than myself, you know, it's an emotional thing. So I think the way things are going, something will come. And people will run to register. It's still early, and you know we are behaving as though elections are next month. It's August, second week of August, 2027. Yeah, that's about
It's 23 months.
It's about 23 months from
22.
You know, if you remove September and part of October. So we still are a distance. But when you look at the posture of politicians, they are seeing this as a voting bloc, not as a number of Kenyans who need to be given their rightful place on the table of economic emancipation, as it were, and to be able to participate. And therefore, the push and pull right now, including of who is going to be in which lineup, is really to try and get this Gen Z bloc to vote for us. Yet, the things I raised earlier are the things, perhaps, for instance, even the current government should be addressing very aggressively. The issues of incomes, because I have pushed this and I want to say it again. There's a big difference between having people participating in the economy and having a gainful income. 17 million people, including the ones who sell kaluma on the road, are participating, are actually counted to be doing something. But are they able to put food on the table because of that? No. The guys who are going to construction sites, and being cut out because today they want 200 people and they are 400, so they do a head count until 200 and they cut out. Are they considered to be participating in some economy? Yes. But are they able to make an income? No. So the posture of the politicians, seems to suggest that all we are looking for is power, and power by all means necessary, unfortunately, when you think about that. When you think about the opposition, and it's good that it's interesting that you talked about how they are shaping and forming and who is going to be their leader. I think you have hosted most of them here. And they are all saying, I am the guy. I'm the one who is supposed to be leading all of you. And at the right time, we shall agree who among us, And what will happen? Chances are that they will all end up on the ballot box because now nobody can step down for the other But what next? I think for me, two things are troubling that I think must be addressed urgently. One is that we have a form of governance, which is our devolution system of government, that we seem to be clawing back on. I worry there's a lot of decentralization that is going on right now when you look at just how much the national government is doing an overreach. In the rhetoric, it seems to suggest that we are devolving, but the reality, and if the devolution conference is anything to go by, then there's a lot to be concerned about. Whether it's in healthcare, in agriculture, in water, in trade, all those are devolved functions, but that's where you see a lot of big hand, the national government are trying to participate, in that space. What that is doing, and then the reforms of the state agencies that I talked about that were supposed to be in line with the form of devolution of governance that we have. For me, if we don't address that, what it will do is that it continues, to eat into service delivery. It continues to affect service delivery because, first of all, it's not clear who is accountable for what right now. If the national government is now, there's this whole push and pull, for instance, of the doctors and nurses, of the medical workers who had been hired, on a contract basis, who are supposed to be transferred to counties, and the costs that come. So for me, that is big. But the second one, which is related to the conversation we are going to be having later today, is a whole discussion of what do we do about our debt repayment. We cannot continue to bury our heads. Already, you see a movement towards restructuring of our debt, though quietly, trying to, for instance, trying to reframe the Euro bond and what have you, try and pay it, get as much. But at what cost? Because we just did a study that basically shows that for every 1 shilling extra that we get in debt, we are paying in debt. Basically, we are paying less, 1 shilling, 0.2. to healthcare, just to show that there's an opportunity cost that we are foregoing, and if we don't do something about it, it means that there is a generation that will be sacrificed. And I worry that generation is the current generation.
Right.
The future one will pay, but the current one will be sacrificed in terms of service delivery. Think about capitation. Sam, honestly, should we be debating how many children we have in school today, having not transferred capitation for a school term that is ending in 3 weeks?
Right.
For me, those are
things. National exams starting.
And national exams that are starting. For me, those two things cannot. I know there are a lot of conversations right now going on. The IMF team is in town. There's a lot of discussion going on. But we have to bite the bullet and say we cannot continue in this trajectory. Let us reorganize things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And while at it, Diana, we're also seeing different ways of accumulating debt. Whether it's the securitization of the road maintenance levy,
PPP,
or PPPs, and you're being told that the government has not spent any money, or if you want to procure an integrated health management system, you find one that costs 104 billion shillings, which you'll pay from collections from SHIF, and you pay it over a period of 10 years. What does that do to service delivery, but also the sanity of Kenyans over prolonged periods of time?
Why are you setting me up? Sam, we are headed for insanity. If not, and people keep joking about the questions of mental health. We work so hard as Kenyans. People are trying everything they can to increase their incomes. But even after you've increased your income, your electricity bill goes up. The bill at the petrol station goes up. We have decided, and there is the term coined by AMS, we do not have a revenue problem, we have an expenditure problem. We just have thieves who've decided the only way they make money, remain in power and not in jail, is by extracting, planning haste after haste from the taxpayers, be it debt, be it public-private partnership, be it privatization. Because part of where we are, the risk we are now at of risk distress is the reason why we must now move to privatization move to privatization very, very fast. But we always needed to go to privatization. Lots of studies have been made. Is this the right government to take us to privatization? When they increase, goodness, our SHIF premiums are proper insurance premiums. By all standards, they are insurance premiums. I logged on to SHA yesterday. No, this is a medical cover. I cannot be getting the services I'm getting from SHIF, even if it's supposed to be progressive and I'm contributing to somebody else in Kenya. The premium I am paying is not what I pay for my private medical cover. So with the money that we have been able to contribute, just the people who have payslip, it was enough to create a proper transition, improve service delivery, but it is not. If anything, there are more fundraisers. The last time we were on this show, we highlighted that for some reason, the setup of SHIF and SHA was such that you couldn't access clearance on a weekend. Even after paying all these premiums and this high imported system. Whereas our universities here are the spaces for testing technology for global giants. We have to leave the country and go and import technology, whereas we could have created it very, very cheaply. Where are we headed? Unless there is an emergency brake. Unless there is an emergency brake on the expenditure heist in this country, Kenyans will show their insanity without a doubt. Now I'm actually inspired. You have reminded us how we will get Kenyans to vote. it is this pain of the economy. You know, there's Galana Kulalu, where we funded 60% with our tax and debt. Then the remaining 40% we decided to go for a 30-year public-private partnership. So first, the investor must recover their 30 years. Then after 30 years, we come and start paying, getting the benefits of the money invested in debt. Are we normal? Are we surely normal? We are very happy that we have floated a very huge bond. We may not even need an IMF program. We never needed an IMF program if people are not stealing. What is this? Catering at State House and other State House residences. Why are we even building State Houses in every county? Who needs a bedroom for the president in their county? Is that the priority? We need our money to be working. Surely, by the way, we are totally insane. We are mad, and our leaders, unfortunately, are more insane by not seeing what is happening. By now, Parliament and even Senate that is in Mashinani should be doing a serious audit. Remember, the same practices we have at the national level is what we have at the county level. The reason why counties have between, the average is, maybe the median is 150, between 50 bank accounts to 400 bank accounts, is so that they can have many hustler funds as government. So our county governments, when they have delays, and luckily now they are allowed to do some borrowing for budget support, they borrow, and over-borrow. Any money that comes, it is used to repay that. It is a reason why our health sector is in crisis, our agricultural sector. Whereas it's not entirely devolved, it's also in crisis. Right. So I must pay for an agrovet, I pay for an agricultural extension officer, I pay for a clinician to come and treat me. Most probably I will go to the pharmacy. Thereafter I buy textbooks, exercise book, I pay for tuition, I pay for meals, I pay for fuel, I pay for road levy, my fingers can't count.
Expressway if you're in a hurry.
Yes, and it will look, and it will never repay itself. It will never repay itself because we have never reached the target that was used for that PPP. Who defined that? Who defined that? And then the normal people who tell us the truth, we attack them. And we undermine their mandate by creating more insane processes of taking over that money, including the compensation panel, the debt, the MAT, the mosquito, the multi, that one on corruption.
Multi-agency team.
Yeah, and we do not have enough mental health institutions in this country. So I hope those who are stealing will create enough mental health institution for what they are doing to Kenyans.
Okay, Joshua, I'll get to you. But before I do, so Sheila, if we continue, I saw this phrase and it really made a lot of sense, that in this country, we continue to look for private solutions to what is a public problem. And you clearly see it with the education sector, where schools are not funded, the infrastructure is not well done, nobody bothers to improve it as soon as children are growing, and therefore parents have to look for resources to take their children to private institutions. Of course, the private institution is owned by an investor who is also an entrepreneur. At what cost? Then these goods, whether it's the roads maintenance, whether it's management of health, and we are looking for the private entities to come and do exactly that. When you continue to borrow to finance current problems, but it's outside the officially declared public debt, what are we doing to our country? And how then does this speak to our political leaders, even as they come for the votes of Kenyans? Should they have solutions to this, or they'll just come up with creative ideas of how to manage an economy?
I think the first thing is that we have to understand that education is the backbone of any economic development we would like to do anywhere. You have to first start with education. Why? Because it is through education that we have a health sector. It is through these teachers, these lecturers, that we have this workforce, that we have a health sector going. It is through education that, you know, you have people working literally every industry that supports the economy. The Kenyan industry is supported by service, it is supported by agriculture, and all these different sectors that I'm counting really start off from the education system. Now, if we look at the education system and what we're going through today, we have capitation issues. Today, we still have lecturers that are on strike. They haven't showed up in university. As the government, we have to become a little bit serious with what our priorities look like, because if we are not working hard to invest in the foundation, which is the education system, then we might as well forget about these economic developments that we are discussing. What does that mean, or what does that look like? Sam, today, if you have parents who want to take their kids to school, you have a parent who has to sell their land, they have to borrow, they have to do left, right, and center because capitation is not there and they need to pay in order to take their children to school. So once your parents have gone through all these struggles, they have borrowed, they have sold land, and then they take you to school. If you finish school on time, that's a different conversation because the strikes are going on now. So your 4-year program might end up being a 6-year program. And that becomes expensive again because now you're living in the hostels for 6 years instead of 4 years. Now we are just compounding the issue once again. So you take your 6 years and you finish your 4-year program. And now you're done. Remember that people like the president went through boom where they didn't have to pay anything for this education system. But okay, now you have help. You graduate some, you have help. You go, and luckily for you, you do get a job. Maybe you're part of the Nyota program, right? So Nyota helps you and you secure a very good job. Your entry-level salary will be somewhere around 55,000. Let's analyze your pay slip. I think Diana here is discussing the pay slip. Let's take 30% automatically will go, part of your pay slip. That's 15K. Sindio?
Yep.
Then you have your SHA that you'll have to pay into.
2.75.
Yeah, 2.7, okay. Then you have your housing levy that we're going to deduct from that again. So we're looking at what, about 5 to 7K plus or minus. You're paying back HELB, right? So let's say 5K is going to help. So I'm going through the numbers as I'm going through. So we are looking at about your salary is 55K, 20K has automatically gone to pay off, you know, all these things that I'm counting. You're left with 25,000. Remember that your parent who is back at home, they had to sell land, they had to do all these things. And now their graduate child is working somewhere in a bank, in a hospital, whatever. And you would like to support your parents, right? So you're going to send them another 5K or 10K, depending on where your parents sit, right? Yeah. Remember, you had 25 left. So
your siblings.
Your siblings, some of them are also in school. You see, and who is taking majority of this pay slip that I just counted? It is the government. And yet, who invested the most to take you there?
You've not eaten, you've not lived in a house, you've not...
You haven't lived. I'm assuming Kwanzaa, you're homeless. Just go find someone to live on a tree. That one I'm not worried about yet. These are just the basic pay slip issues that we see, and yet the government is taking it back. So it is the government's responsibility, if you think about it, to invest and not even play around with the education system, because they are the biggest beneficiaries of your pay slip once you get this pay slip. And we cannot mess around with our education system. So for me, it's a question of, you look at the political class and it's almost like they're rising up to this bubble that is coming up to burst at some point. And it will. It will. These conversations that we're having here, people are having them as they're looking at their pay slips that have now shrunk. Because remember, before this, there was no housing levy that was taken out of this pay slip I just described. The NHIF was not the same as what SHA is going through today. And I always say there's nothing wrong with paying up all these taxes if we could see where this money is going to. We have a lot of ODS debt, which is a whole different conversation that I don't even want to get into. So we must work on our education system. We must work on our healthcare system, and we have to work on our security just as a mere basic minimum for development. We like talking a lot about, and the president is talking about, Kenya is heading towards Singapore. Well, Singapore did not play around with its education system. I can tell you that, Sam. They invested it. And one thing they made sure was that once they had this educated labor force, they wanted to retain it. Brain drain was not a government policy. So you're not exporting the labor, because when you export the labor, then you make it a scarce commodity, and then it becomes more expensive even here at home. So we are not educating our nurses so that they can all go and become nurses in the UK or wherever it is that they, or teachers, you know, off to Minnesota. What?
They'll send us dollars.
Yes, that's why can't we just make the dollars here? If the labor, we wouldn't need them to send us dollars if we had healthcare, if we had education, then remittances would not be a big issue back here at home. So we cannot have brain drain. I mean, as a developing country.
What did Singapore do with the payslip?
What did Singapore do with the payslip? Yep. Singapore reinvested back into, so for example, if you look at the education system with Singapore, what Singapore did with the education system is they made sure that you had high quality education that was fully funded by the government. That was number one. Then when you got your payslip, you had the opportunity to reinvest it back in Singapore itself again. So then what Singapore ended up doing is they ended up attracting its other investors as a hub, as a service provider hub. That is what they did. They kept it at home, not to educate all these people and make the job market locally so unattractive that everybody's trying to run away. And by the way, Sam, we can't run away anymore. Are you seeing what is going on in America or in Europe and the rest of them? We have to stay home. Like, we're not going anywhere. So again, these issues must be taken as a priority and must be invested. There's no shortcut. There's no, sometimes we tend to, the political class tends to like feeling good or feeling better about themselves instead of actually rolling up your sleeves and getting to work.
Get down to work. Okay, Joshua, you'll have the final word. I know that that's a blessing or not. But in light of all these things, I don't know then what should the next 22 months mean for Kenyans, because we have enough problems, very few solutions and solution makers, especially in the political class.
Now, thank you very much. I just wish to say that, you know, the governance space, once you are in a governance space, you understand how it's not as simplistic as it appears, that you can just wake up and just turn things around. Yeah. So there's always the dynamism that comes with the governance space because of the integrated culture that has been since 60s, so that one government cannot change it at a go. However, it is the small building steps that work. Now, for the next 22 months, I think it's pretty cut out in two ways. I feel that the conversation of 2024 was a national conversation that was to cut across both the governed and the governed. And one of the problems I always foresee, we put too much focus on the leadership at the expense of the people. How much do we engage the people and give them some check, like some reality check for them to understand how things work? How much patience does the public have, for example, to roll out these programs and have a long-term thinking? Kenyans are accustomed to quick fix. Kenyans want a turnaround. So that debt problems that have accumulated over the years, the reckless spending that the government has always been doing, and more importantly, misprioritization of our budgeting and our priority or even resource allocation makes it difficult. So for me, for the next 22 months, I'll start from the citizen point of view. How do you remain engaged? And it goes to the basics, registering as a voter. Number two, the reflection should be, what kind of leadership are we looking for? And that stems from right from the ward level, not even just the focus at the presidency. Yeah. It starts at the ward level, the constituency level, and the county level, which I think has a huge impact. I applaud when you say Senate Mashinani, because the whole essence of governance being close to the people, it was the idea that people should see and feel and touch this government, so that even when it comes to reflection as to what comes in 2027, it is important for Kenyans to reflect and say, what can we have that makes sense? Importantly, when it comes to the government, 22 months seems to be a long time, but it's a short time. I'll give it a shorter period of time. I'll give it a 12-month period, because from next year, August, we'll be fully into a political space, and it will all be about optics and what sells to the people. For me, the next 12 months is a simple case. One, the government has to tie its loose ends on matters universal health care. The issue of SHA has been, if you look at the last 1 year, the chaotic transition from NHIF sets a foundation, or it set up in a foundation where most people assumed it will be a total failure. But what they have been able to do for the past 1 year showcases some progress. However, the teething effect, because of how it started, because one thing I faulted the start was more or less sensitization. There was no so much campaign and sensitization between every person. One, the citizen. Two, you have the hospitals or the users, so that the system launch became chaotic, and you see now the government is walking backwards trying to solve the challenges. And for example, trying to sort out the debts that were accrued under NHIFs. So I feel SHA offers the best opportunity of how a program can be turned around and make it sensible. There's a point I have raised that is critical. You find that majority of the people bearing or shouldering the burden are the payslip owners. Yet we are mostly an informal economy. What happens to the informal side when it comes to the contribution towards this SHA? So I feel this 12 months, SHA has then to become more responsive than it is. There has been a progress the last 6 months, but the next 6 months to 10 months becomes really critical. Number two, the governance aspect that is missing when it comes to government programs. And I think the first one they're trying to get it right is this Nyota. Have you seen, for example, fanning out all PSS to the field? All of them at the county level. I saw one for Homa Bay. All MPs, PS, MCA senators. Why would they do that? Because they want an intersection. They want people to own this. The other bit has always been launched. Everything is launched here. And I have an issue with us always launching things just here. But it never gets to the field. So that people will read and hear about a program, then the program doesn't succeed.
But Joshua, at the very start of this conversation, you had Sheila saying that that's politicizing what is ideally a World Bank funded program.
Necessary.
I have no problem with the politicization if it will work. What are we saying here? We want an impactful program.
Yes.
How do you expect? Let me use a case study. When I was at the county, I realized the biggest problem we would face. And this is a problem that county governments were hit in the first and the second round. When you have a program, let me give, for example, you can go to a public participation and people will tell you blatantly, we want border sheds. But as to how it is designed, how it is to be implemented, or how it is to be done, no one discusses about it. So you find at the CC level or at the chief officer level, they launched it with pomp and glamour and says, we're going to do this border shed, this is the money applied to it, and that's it. 1 year down the line, please go check that border shed. No one uses it, it is dusty, it has been, in fact, the worst of it was the market centers that were being done by the county governments. You actually put up a whole structure, no one uses it, the hawkers are still on the road. Where is the disparity? It is when you have a policy head here and you have the implementation back there in the field. So I prefer a program that is launched and done at the field, better than the one that we just launch here. We do the camera, they'll come here on studio, they'll tell you how this program is going to impact. They'll give you the figures that, for example, you just read 100,000 youth, but where are they? How do you identify those 70 per ward? That's a very political issue, because a ward is with a population of 100,000, how do you pick 70 youth? The majority are the youth. So you have to really engage the people physically. So for me, the next 6-10 months, I would wish this kind of thing. I've seen Senate is in the field. County governments, for me, are the missing link. Actually, the last 4 years has seen the national government completely taking over the space of the county governments. Okay. You can imagine you're talking about SHA, and county governments are not in the conversation. Yet they're the ones doing level 1, level 2, level 3. So I feel that the next 12 months, county governments can try get back their space and try work very closely with the people, so that as we go to the 2027, there's more of clarity. But
when you say conversation, you mean talking?
Nope. When it comes to programs, when it comes to talking, they have to be seen with the people. Let me give, for example, if you talk about the nurses and the doctors.
No, I just wanted you to stop. So the feedback this morning at Citizen TV, Sam Gituko, the hashtag to use Citizen Debre. Kora Kenyan saying on X, Lekishon Leban, keen analysis of the Nyota program shows a lack of employment-based development rooted in industrial and farm growth. Nyota feels like another cash incentive model that has failed before. Youth have questioned World Bank loans. One hopes this isn't a political appeasement. Godi Baraza, the government has mastered the art of luring young people into credit traps, leaving many stuck servicing unmanageable loans. This is not a sustainable way to empower or create real opportunities for the youth. MC Rumaz, I think Gen Z can be an alternative voice if they mobilize and register in large numbers. I think they can bring real change. But does our do our votes really count? The problem we have in Kenya is the politics of Mtuwetu. Our politics is not issue-based but tribal. All right, Frank Orinde, our politics is loud and empty. No one is offering real alternatives. The opposition isn't opposing. They're just waiting for their turn at the trial. Kenya doesn't need echo chambers. We need thinkers, reformers, and doers who can break the cycle of recycled failures. Lekishon Laban, again, you say low youth turnout in vote registration contrasts their zeal in protest for a new IBC. The dream to vote out bad leaders will fade if that energy is lost. Guard the process, show up, ensure transparency. Vigilance now will shape 2027. Keep that street energy is what Lekishon is saying. Thank you so much. Joshua Kipto, formerly Speaker of Nandi County Assembly. Diana Baraza from the Institute of Social Accountability. Sorry, I don't know where that name, but I did.
Baraza of all people.
Diana Gishengo.
Surely I'm not in the health ministry. I'm not the one responsible for health ministry at any given point.
Dr. Abraham Rugo from the Budgeti Hub, and Sheila Olang, who is the development economist. Sorry for butchering your name. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time. Bye for now.